I think the combination of not having Embiid definitely derailed them. They didn't have a presence inside. We all know that. But the reason why I'm going to put a strong level of culpability on the shoulders of Wiggins, who averaged about 28 points per game in the previous 4 games before yesterday, was not because he scored 4 points. It was because he wasn't aggressive. You don't know whether he was in some kind of slump or not. I mean, the guy attempted just 6 shots. That makes absolutely positively no sense whatsoever, considering the freshman phenom that he is, the guy whose hands they put the ball in over the last couple of weeks or so, the way that he was rolling, to walk into this game and not to look to be aggressive was incredibly disappointing. I definitely expected more from him. I didn't get more from him, and that was really the problem more so than anything else. But in the end, what it comes down to is that the absence of Embiid really limited and prohibited Kansas. I said before when we were picking the brackets, when I picked Kansas to go to the Final Four, it was under the notion that Embiid would ultimately play. But in the end, that's not the case. And without him, they were just a different team. I think that Wiggins' upside is great. I think he's a tremendous talent, but he just shows that there's room for growth and that there's still a man's game that's separate and apart from the college game. Because when it was a man's game yesterday, he didn't show up in terms of his aggression. He wasn't looking to be aggressive. He got completely stymied. It made no sense whatsoever, but that's what ended up happening, Skip.
Okay, but Stephen A., I don't want to hear all this hubbub about man's game. I don't want to hear the excuses about how these are boys among men. Do you remember what Carmelo did when he was a pure freshman at Syracuse? He looked like a man among men to me. Do you remember what Anthony Davis did 2 years ago, 2012? He looked like a man among men to me, a freshman among seniors. So, I told you all the way back to early January, as soon as I'd seen a couple of games of Embiid, I said, that is my #1 pick in the draft. So without him, I looked to an Andrew Wiggins and said, okay, kid, rise and shine. The decks are cleared. Now it's your team, your turn, your time to shine. Obviously, coming in, he was the LeBron of this class. He got all the preseason hype, and he is still #1 on Chad Ford's big board, and we're going to talk about our rankings a little bit later in the show. But yesterday, I got to tell you, I was disappointed, but Stephen A., I was not shocked. How many times this year did I bring up the fact, well, there's another game against Oklahoma, against Oklahoma State. Andrew Wiggins disappeared. I don't get it. Jabari Parker, on the other hand, a guy you love, in the loss to Mercer, Duke's loss to Mercer last Friday, I thought Jabari just tried too hard. He was 1,000 miles an hour and needed to gear it back a little bit. In this case, Andrew Wiggins, I'm thinking, where are you? It was a case of being too passive. It was almost like Clowney was this year after such a great year the year before. But this year, Clowney at South Carolina, we kept saying, where are you? Are you hurt? Is it really being doubled and triple teamed? Or are you just protecting yourself? With Wiggins yesterday, Stephen A., I remind you, this wasn't against Kentucky. This wasn't against Florida. This was against a 10-seed Stanford. And by the way, Johnny Dawkins, and I love Johnny, much respect, has done a sensational job with just a pretty good team, a team that finished tied for 3rd in the Pac-12. Yet against this team, Andrew Wiggins, with all the explosive athleticism, the ability to rebound and defend, to occasionally take over, we saw him average 28 a game the previous 4 games without Embiid. Where are you? 1 for 6? I don't get it. Was he pouting? Was the moment too big for him? Is he not happy with Bill Self's system at Kansas? I don't know, Stephen A., but I don't like what I saw. And it hurt his draft stock in my eyes, not in a lot of other people's eyes. We'll talk about this later. But in my eyes, big moment, big stage, big stakes, and you disappear like that, something is very wrong. As you point out, was he sick? Was he hurt? I don't know. But that was a significant disappearance.
Well, definitely it was. They zoned up some time. They trapped him. They made sure to make it tough for him. And I think that what they noticed with Wiggins, you have some of these players, Skip, and I certainly don't mean to imply that in totality the college game is a boy's game compared to a man's game. I'm simply saying that there are some dudes that are tailor-made for college, and there are some dudes that are ready for the next level. The Carmelo Anthony, the Anthony Davises of the world, clearly they were guys that were ready for the next level. You look at some other guys, and obviously we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the show, not so much it appears. But in the case of an Andrew Wiggins, when you look at his athleticism, his individuality, you know what, he flows and he's all into it when he's getting his way. But when you frustrate him, you hold the ball, you slow the game down, you use up the clock the whole 35 seconds, you make sure you trap him, you zone him up, and his athleticism isn't able to come shining through, he might appear a bit disinterested, a bit aloof. And as a result, his game may not be on its A level. That's something that Johnny Dawkins and Stanford, it appears to me, seem to notice more so than anything else. So when I look at an Andrew Wiggins, I don't think they're going to hold that against him on the NBA level, because the NBA level, over the stretch of 82 games, 48 minutes, a 24-second shot clock, not to say the absence, because sometimes teams play zone, but primarily it's a man-to-man league. I think you'll look at a Wiggins and see that somebody like him will shine under those circumstances, because he'll have more of opportunity to showcase his individual skill set. But on a collegiate level, you can clearly frustrate him, which is what Stanford did. And they frustrated him to the point where his aggression seemed to leave. And that's where I think if he's going to be hurt, it's going to be hurt because of that. It wasn't because he was ineffective. It was because for far too long during that game, he appeared disinterested.